Hello everybody and welcome to the World War II weapons Iceberg. And I'm gonna use this list over here that I made, so if you wanna use it, you must credit me or else I will find you in your home. That was kidding, for legal reasons. Also, announcement, my birthday is coming soon. It's not really an announcement, but my friend gave me a gift, so here. So I will put his YouTube down below. He does cringy Roblox videos. Just kidding. He does really fun, like horror Roblox videos. So if you're interested, subscribe to his channel. If you're not, it doesn't matter. He will cry later. It's okay. And yeah, keep on for the video and look at all these interesting topics that I'm gonna talk about and explain and stuff. So keep in tune. The GUSTAV Gun. The GUSTAV Gun was a giant German superweapon weighing 1,350 tons and was designed to destroy the Maginot Line. However, after the German bypassing of the Maginot Line, they decided to use it for real combat against real soldier. It was used in Crimea against the Soviet Union, and after shooting only 47 rounds, it disabled enemy forces. This gigantic, powerful weapon was extremely destructive and did gigantic explosions. However, the biggest thing is that it was just too gigantic. It worked on rails and required a 4,000 men infantry troop to carry and use this weapon. It required even 40 people to just fire this weapon, and it was just very inconvenient and very hard to move. And there was also many iterations of the GUSTAV gun. There was the Dora, which was an even bigger, even heavier weapon that wasn't even used at the end. But the problem is that it's just too gigantic, too big, and just not mobile enough to be used for warfare. But you know what else is better than Rupert? Our sponsor for today, Gerda, A Flame in Winter. They've done some stuff for us before. It's well, if you haven't heard of it, it's a Steam game about World War II, about a nurse called Gerda. And well, they've come back again to sponsor our channel, and they're giving away a free Steam key. So I'm gonna put it here. So the first one who puts it in is gonna work. So you could try it if you're the first people to watch it. You should try it. If this thing has like 1,000 views, then you know he's probably gone a long time ago. But if you're the first one, you know, quickly put this link, this code. And if you're not, well, I think they're gonna release a new DLC. Maybe they're gonna go on sale. You can wishlist it on Steam and see if they're gonna go on sale, and you know, maybe get yourself a new World War II game to play. And it's also story-based, so we love story-based games. The Maginot Line. In 1930, Minister of War André Maginot developed a new plan to prevent World War II. It was called the Maginot Line. It was an entire line of fortresses and walls rigged with cannons, explosives, landmines, and would have prevented Germany from invading. However, the problem was this huge $7 billion project from the French was that the Germans instead, during World War II, bypassed the entire wall through Belgium. Rupert. On June of 1944, the Allies began Operation Titanic. During this operation, they dropped thousands and thousands of paratroopers into Germany, planning to invade Germany. The Germans, scared, went and investigated those sites and saw that all these parachutes were empty. The paratroopers had escaped from their parachutes and ran away and were somewhere in Germany. This created mass fear and hysteria, and people didn't know where were these paratroopers. This was the magic of Rupert. You see, this dummy paratrooper wasn't so dumb after all. Rupert was rigged with an explosive. When he would land, he would pop and disappear, making it seem that these parachutes were real paratroopers that were ready to invade Germany. And the goal of Operation Titanic was to fool the Germans, to create fear that there were other problems in Germany, and was all to cover Operation Overlord, an invasion in Normandy to destroy the Germans. If you've ever taken a psychology class, you may have heard of the American psychologist called B.F. Skinner. And something you may not know about B.F. Skinner is that not only did he develop the theory of operant conditioning, he also developed what we call the Pigeon Bomb. And the concept of this is insane and honestly might have worked. So let me talk you through it. So B.F. Skinner, he was given a $25,000 grant by the US military around 1942 to develop a bomb called the Pigeon Bomb. He believed that, well, if you don't know too much about operant conditioning, that if you condition the pigeon enough, you can condition a pigeon to aim for targets. So you would give him like rewards, consequences. You know, you could condition the pigeon eventually so that the pigeon would go towards enemy targets. And he would use these pigeons to guide bombs. So one of the biggest problems during war is that these bombs were dropping and they were not hitting targets. They were hitting just ground. They weren't, they needed some sort of guidance so that these bombs would hit the targets and not just hit a tree or just hit the ground, and really like guide them towards these bombs. So B.F. Skinner developed a bomb where inside would be a small container and there would be 3 pigeons, and inside would be an explosive. And these pigeons would all point at the same direction, which would guide the bomb. It would trigger a mechanism that would guide the bomb whenever these pigeons would peak. And what happened is that he managed to do it. He managed to train these pigeons to peek at enemy targets, like enemy factories, enemy buildings. And these pigeons were peeking at the right places and not peeking at the ground. And he went to the academy and says, hey, I managed to do it. I developed a bomb where these pigeons would be able to point at the targets. And people thought he was crazy, they were unimpressed, and eventually this plan for the pigeon bomb was scrapped. So if you've ever played Call of Duty, you may have heard about these explosive dogs that attack you during the, I think it's called invasion mode. Well, during World War II, there were explosive dogs as well, but this time it was not for infantry troops. So let me walk you through how we even came up with the concept of explosive dogs and how it was used during different battles. So explosive dogs were mostly used by the Soviets. And ironically, they would use German dogs to attack the Germans. And they would train these German shepherds to go for tanks. How they would do it, the same thing with the Pigeon Bomb, was conditioning. They would hide food in these empty tanks, and they would guide these dogs to go to these tanks. And well, with time, these dogs would directly just go and run towards tanks. And at the beginning, this theoretically should have worked. They should have just ran towards all the tanks and exploded. The first problem of these dogs is that they ran towards the tanks, but they were too scared of approaching moving tanks. So the Soviets were very stingy with their oil. So they didn't want to drive these tanks so that these dogs can follow these tanks and really be trained for combat. So when these dogs saw these moving tanks, they were not able to approach. They were too scared of approaching a moving tank. So they weren't properly conditioned for battle. And well, they were still used, but mostly the tanks weren't moving too fast, or they managed to conquer their fear. So we can think about one of the battles called the Battle of Stalingrad. And at the airport, the Germans were approaching their position, and lots of tanks and soldiers were at the airport in Stalingrad, and the Soviets released the dogs. They managed to disable 13 tanks, and the Soviets launched their counterattack against the Germans. This was really one of the only places where it's effective. I think it's also effective in the Battle of Kursk, but all of these, well, it wasn't very effective in a larger scale. The Great Panjandrum. So the Great Panjandrum was a weapon developed by the Admiralty of Directory of Miscellaneous Weapons Development. So they were just people who developed all kinds of strange weapons for fun, that many of them appear on this list because of how weird they are. And one of their weapons is the Great Panjandrum. This weird circular thing had a use, and it was to overcome the Atlantic walls. Between 1942 and 1944, Germany built a giant wall that would prevent any British invasion. And this Great Panjandrum device, strapped with cordite rockets, would spin, and then just break down all these walls, then they could invade Germany. Now, the problem is that it wasn't very stable. I'm going to show you guys a video in a second where the Great Panjandrum doesn't break the Atlantic wall, but instead chases a dog. And yeah, you've seen for this video, it's not very effective. It's very unstable. It goes everywhere. It has its own mind, and it's chasing a dog instead of the walls. So it's a pretty useless device. The Kaiten. As you may know, the Japanese, they love to make devices that make people revive themselves, and the Kaiten was one of these devices. It was a human-guided torpedo, and it would only be used once against a US ship. The US ship that was affected was the USS Mississauga, and they were just a ship. They were refilling oil and just chilling and sitting on the deck, and boom, the entire boat explodes. It goes in flame, and they weren't hit by a torpedo, but they were hit by a Kaiten, which is a human-guided torpedo. So obviously the pilots didn't survive the explosion, and it was only the only place. The problem with the Kaiten is that yes, it works in paper, but in concept it doesn't work. First of all, it was very hard to train pilots with the Kaiten. It's very hard to guide, and these pilots would just get concussions during the training because they would have to hit a dummy target, and they would hit it so hard that they would, hit their own head. And it was just also very ineffective. It would be spotted easily. They would explode before. And even like torpedoes, you could kind of like guide them, so you didn't need like human torpedoes. It was pretty ineffective, and yeah, it was just, we didn't really need these human torpedoes. It was also like worse than normal torpedoes because they couldn't go too deep, so they had to be on the surface, and they were like even easier to spot. So there was like no point of making a worse device and that revives people, and it was just not very effective device. But it is funny to imagine some random guy piloting a torpedo as a ship. I think it's funny. Maybe my sense of humor is messed up. The potato gun. Strangely enough, it was not developed by the Irish, but developed by the British. It's part of a huge other weapon called the Holman projector. We're going to talk at the end. But the potato gun was just something that was shot by the Holman projector. You just basically put a potato, and then the projector shoots air, and then the potato goes. But it wasn't used in the war. You can't kill a guy with a potato. I don't think so. But you can give someone a concussion with a potato. Something, I don't know, man. The Goliath. The Goliath was similar to the RCXD from Call of Duty. It's a 2 feet, 130-ton vehicle that the Germans would guide and try to destroy the enemy. And it wasn't effective for many reasons. The first reason is that this vehicle, if it fell into a hole, well, it doesn't work anymore. If someone shoots at it and it hits like a main component, well, your giant 130-ton bomb doesn't work anymore. And yeah, it wasn't very effective. Sometimes you would just lose connection, and you're like, oh my god, I guess I can't use my car anymore. So yeah, sometimes the connection wasn't even good, and it just didn't work. And yeah, it has the same problems as modern, like small cars that you guide at home. But it was used once effective for one time, and it was effective in 1944. So a French division called the 509 Parachuters Division, they parachute down and they get into their vehicle and start driving. While driving, they see a small little car and they're like, oh, that's cute. It wasn't cute because it was rigged with explosives, and the small Goliath explodes, exploding the entire vehicle and killing the passengers. Operation PX. Operation PX was not a weapon, but was an entire operation that used a very devastating weapon. So you may have seen in my channel about something called Unit 731. So they were a secret Japanese unit that was in Manchuria, and they were testing on Chinese and Koreans all kinds of biological weapons like cholera, all kinds of bacteria, and it was very devastating, and people would grow things on their skins, and lots of terrifying experiments on these people. And after UNICEF 731 developed a biological weapon, they were ready to use it. They were ready to take a plane and shoot these biological weapons on Los Angeles, San Francisco, California, and all kinds of different places in the US. And the reason why it was aborted, there were many reasons, but one of the reasons is one of the generals, at the end when it had to be approved, he said no. He said that if we actually did this, it would not become a war between the United States and Japan. It would be a war between humanity and bacteria. Operation Pastorius. So the reason why I put this as a weapons list is that there are many weapons, strange weapons that were used during this operation. And it's even an operation that you might not even heard of in your life. So let's dive right into the story of Operation Pastorius. So in 1942, a Nazi U-boat lands in New York, and it was extremely foggy, so people there didn't know that a German U-boat had landed. And a Nazi officer disguised as an American sailor went up to one of the Coast Guards. And at the beginning, the sailor was talking English to the Coast Guard, and everything was peaceful. And he was just telling him that he was just landed, he's a sailor, and that he needed help. And suddenly, one of the guy behind him, one of the other Nazi officers, started speaking German to him, of which his entire ploy is baffled. So he offers a $260 bribe to the Coast Guard, of which the Coast Guard accepts. And then these Nazi officers, these spies, will go to their hotel room in New York, ready to plan Operation Pastorius, a plan to bomb different infrastructure in the US. Now, the Coast Guard, after he received the bribe, he still denounced them and told his boss about it, which the boss eventually told the FBI about it. That was the beginning of the FBI's hunt of Edward Hoover of finding these Nazis within New York. Now, the FBI launched tons of hunts to find him, and they never really managed to find him. And they didn't know where were these Nazis, and they didn't want to launch a wide operation telling everyone about it, because then people would panic and it would be chaos. But luckily, 2 people within the team hated the Nazis, and they defected to the FBI and told them about the ploy. The FBI arrested everyone, even those who confessed, and put them in prison. The 2 people who kind of cooperated and told the FBI, they at the beginning thought that they would receive a Medal of Honor. They thought they would receive a Medal of Honor for what they have done, for how they managed to reveal this entire operation. But instead, Edward Hoover put them in prison for about 30 years. And all the rest were put on the electric chair. Thank you so much for watching this video, and keep in tune for the next videos, and I'll see you in the next videos. See ya.